Before we get into today's episode, don't forget to sign up to the book and the VIP newsletter at thehighestandbestuse.com. For the book, you can get that at Amazon, Chapters, Barnes & Noble, all of these places in paperback, ebook, hardcover, and of course now the Audible version as well. So grab the book, sign up to the VIP newsletter, thehighestandbestuse.com, and now to today's episode.
My name is Deji Oduntan, and the highest and best use for my business is passive wholesaling.
Thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast, where we talk techniques to optimize your land, structure, skill sets, and time, as well as the highest and best use principles to make your business more profitable, productive, and efficient. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. I'm super pumped for today. We've got Deji Oduntan on the show. Deji is in his early 30s, landed in 2019 as an immigrant from Nigeria, right? Nigeria. Awesome guy. Super. I'm so excited for this. He's done about 20 deals in wholesaling. He's a big time up and comer, and he has a company called Deals Estate. So my man, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm so good. I'm excited for this.
Thank you very much. I'm excited as well.
We got chatting before the show, and It's funny because when we get into these episodes, it's like we can sit there and we can have a conversation all day.
Yeah.
But then we have to come and actually do the show. So we save it for here. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Deji, and as you mentioned, I landed in 2019. I'm an immigrant from Nigeria. My background has largely been in tech, so I had worked in tech, done an MBA, co-founded a startup right before coming to Canada, and then in 2019 I landed here right before COVID.
Yeah.
And all through 2020 I was literally home alone here in Canada because I didn't come with my family. They were back home in Nigeria. At the time, we just had a baby, so my daughter was about 6 months.
Yeah.
So it was really painful leaving her in Nigeria, coming here to Canada to start a new life and basically try to get them here. So all through that period during COVID, I was thinking through what I was going to do here in Canada, basically getting ready for them to come. And I started to think to myself, what do the movers and shakers in Canada do? What do the wealthy people do here, and how can I get into that? So I started to do research, and that research led me to real estate. And I noticed that a lot of people, a lot of millionaires, a lot of billionaires had some sort of exposure to real estate. So I thought, this is an industry that I want to get into. I had the experience in tech. I figured this experience would be super to have. Just the knowledge, right, to build financial freedom. I thought that would be helpful to learn. So I started to research, and that just took me down the path that I've been on since I came into the country, and it's been very, very interesting.
Where did you come up with the idea of wholesaling real estate? Because it's very niche, right? It's very specific. You could have been a realtor, you could have been a flipper, you could have been a whole host of things in real estate. Why wholesaling?
So you know how they say identify your why?
Yeah.
So when I was learning more about real estate and identifying the different strategies, one thing that was really sticking out to me was the fact that, again, I had my family that was coming, and what we needed at the time was active income, right? Again, I was a recent immigrant.
Yeah.
And the other strategies were more around delayed gratification, waiting for a couple of months. But the wholesaling strategy really stuck out to me because that allowed me to get active income relatively fast.
Cash now.
Get
paid. Yeah.
Sell your house fast.
Yeah.
So that resonated with me. And then I was able to do a couple of deals. I would say I did about 3 deals in the first 2 months. And that obviously opened my eye to the possibility of then building like a business around it. So that was essentially what allowed me to at least continue in that path to build a business around wholesaling.
Interesting. What's your favorite part? Now that you've been in it for a little bit, what's your favorite part?
Well, I would say just the art of finding a deal, right? It's bittersweet because you have to cycle through multiple bad deals to find one. But the joy of finding one, I think I've found that it opens up multiple possibilities. I think the feeling that you get when you have a deal, and that deal allows you to do 1 or 2 or 3 different strategies, and you could literally choose what's best for you. So I think being able to find that deal and having that control, I love that.
Yeah, that's fun. Isn't it so much fun? To lock that
it's
first deal down. You're like,
it's fun when you have it. It's not fun to find.
I know. It's like digging for gold, right? You're just when you hit it, it's amazing. When you don't, you're frustrated.
Yeah, so you're hitting it on the head.
And you're doing all of this while working a full-time job.
Yeah, so that's also another thing that's interesting. So when I came into Canada, I decided to get a job rather than starting a company. Again, the thought process was I had co-founded a startup back in Nigeria. I was coming into Canada, and that would have been the natural next step, to co-found a startup as well. I usually look at things through like risk profiles. So at the time I was a recent immigrant. I didn't have any experience here in Canada, and my family was in Nigeria. So I thought to make the visa process and the immigration process more seamless, it would be more practical to have a job.
Sure. So
I decided to work for a tech firm downtown Toronto, and that afforded me the time, right, to really think through what my long-term plans were here.
So were you remote from Nigeria,
Yes.
and then you realized, hey, let's go to Toronto because they're actually there? Is that?
So before COVID, it wasn't remote. So
Okay.
I was going to the office, but when COVID happened, it became remote. So with
Gotcha.
the remote like structure, that gave me time, right? And then with COVID, that gave me more time.
Yeah.
So with that time, I was able to think through, what my long-term plans were, and my long-term plans were in line with financial freedom. And as much as everyone keeps saying resign, I have a different perspective, right? When you resign, the thinking is you're resigning because you want to like save time, right? Or better leverage your time. Well, you don't have to resign to do so, right? If you build a team, you're essentially like deleveraging your own time. You don't have to resign to get that time back. So that was what I decided to do. So with the passive wholesaling business, a lot of the active parts of the business isn't really dependent on my time, right? Even if like it's Jesus, that's the active partner. So we've structured it in a way where like time isn't really a hindrance. So I never really had to resign. I don't know if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And I completely agree with you. I think too many people resign too early because they get caught up in the emotion of everybody saying, quit your job, and like do these things. But like at the end of the day, if your job is a tool to get you where you want to be and you enjoy being there, what is the problem? And it sounds like you're saying the same thing.
Yeah. So like I view the job very differently.
Yeah.
There's advantages of having a job, and there's a lot of people that have alluded to that, right? There's obviously the fact that if you wanted to leverage your T4 income for mortgages and whatnot, you could do that.
Yeah.
There's also
it's the cheapest debt you can get.
Exactly,
A-lender
right?
bank financing with the T4 income. Period.
And in an interest rate environment like we are in today, like that's valuable, right?
Yeah.
So that's one. Two is like I find that when people say resign from your job, a lot of people don't stop to ask, what job did you resign from? If I was someone working at McDonald's for $15 an hour, the opportunity cost of resigning isn't that high. Like I lose $15 an hour.
Yeah.
But if you are a doctor or you are someone in tech and you have like multiple six-figure incomes, right? You just can't resign. Just like if a guru says, oh, I was in McDonald's for 5 years, I got financial freedom. Yeah, you could tell the doctor that, but it's not the same opportunity cost, right? So I think people need to really think through their own unique situation, identify what their opportunity cost is, identify what it is they're going to do to be able to make up the income that they're essentially foregoing. And if they need to work longer, like do real estate for a longer period of time, then they should actually take it into account before resigning.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. Now, how do you identify a good deal? If you're saying, okay, I'm going to work my full-time job and I'm also going to do wholesaling on the side, right? And grow my list, grow my podcast, grow all these things. How do you identify a good opportunity where you do sink your time into it?
So I think it's helpful to also understand how the process works with passive wholesaling, right? So passive wholesaling is essentially giving the opportunity for investors to enjoy the upside of wholesaling without necessarily leveraging the time and the effort that's required to do so. So investors would typically work with us, and we basically handle like all the active portions of wholesaling. So now the parts that
the active portion being like finding the deal,
qualifying the seller, doing the walkthroughs and whatnot. Now, those parts have been broken down, right? When we send out campaigns and those calls come in, we've had virtual assistants, who have taken up that role of qualifying the leads. We've also worked with sales partners in different cities who also do that function. So I don't do the function of qualifying the leads, right?
Gotcha.
I do other functions like disposition, managing the systems and processes. So up until we get a deal on that contract, my input isn't largely required from a time perspective. But when it's time to get that deal on that contract, or when the deal is on that contract, then either disposing of the deal or marketing the deal or, doing the buyer walkthroughs, those activities, those are the activities where my time is leveraged. And those activities don't need to be done within a 9 to 5 window, right? So for example, if I want to send out a deal to my list, I don't need to send it out at 9 a.m. I could send it out at 5 p.m. I could send it out at 6 p.m., right? If I want to do buyer walkthroughs, if I want to dispose of a deal, I don't need to conduct the walkthroughs 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. I could do it on a Saturday. Yeah. So there's activities that can be done like at times that are not conflicting with, the 9 to 5. And that's how we've structured it. So the activities are really structured and in a way where it's based off of people's strengths and their time. So for me, if I have a concern with how much time I have, I know the activities that I have to do. And the partners that I work with, they then handle the activities that probably require their time and their efforts.
Gotcha. So what's your main focus? What's your strength?
So I think my strength is actually collaboration, right? Like I find that I work well with people. Even when I find a deal myself, I usually lean towards pulling other people in. So when I started wholesaling, I was doing it myself, right? I was doing everything. So I'll do the funding, I'll do the qualification, I'll do the entire process. But I found out that I wasn't the best at all those things, right? I was probably the best at structuring the end-to-end process and then identifying who the best people were to do certain parts, right? And that's what I think I thrive in. And it could be because I had co-founded the startup and, sometimes I have that bird's eye view. So I figured, okay, if I identify step by step what is required for a deal to be done, and then I identify the who that needs to do those things, that would be the best way to scale the business. So I took myself out and said, you know what, I wouldn't do acquisition because, hey, I have a very deep voice. Sometimes I stutter, I still have the accent, I don't want to give sellers a reason to second guess, who is speaking to them.
That's a very good point. Wow. That's so self-aware to recognize that you think you might have a roadblock and you say, hey, how can I overcome this roadblock and still get to my goal? Yeah.
So it's what it is. I tried it multiple times and, rather than getting the seller to, sell to us, they're asking more questions than they should. So I'm like, that's not where we want to be as a business. So that portion of the process needs to be handled by someone with specific skill sets and, specific requirements. And then that's what we did. So we've structured the business in a way where everyone has a role to play.
So would you say you're more behind the scenes?
Well, I would say from a deal finding standpoint, I'm more behind the scenes. So I don't interface with the sellers. However, from a disposition standpoint, I'm at the forefront because, I build the buyers list, when we are sending out the deals to investors, I send it out or
You're the tech guy.
Yeah.
You're the tech guy. You come from a tech background. You're what the heck, right?
So it's also my name that's on the groups, when I'm sending it out. So I would say from the disposition side, I'm not at the background, but from the deal finding side, from the acquisition side, I'm more on the background.
Awesome. How many people do you figure you have working for your organization now as a whole?
So it's more of a distributed workforce in the sense that so how it works is we operate city by city and this was before we put it on pause, right? And how that would work is, for example, if you are, as an investor, you operate in the Durham region and you were looking for deals in this region, what you would do is you and I would partner up in the Durham region. I would work with the salesperson here and that's essentially just the team, you, me, and that salesperson. Now, we also had a bunch of virtual assistants based out of the Philippines that would do admin tasks, just managing the systems, doing the follow-ups, just ensuring that the process was moving accordingly.
Did you have good luck with VAs?
So,
I've had the worst luck with VAs.
So I would say yes.
Yeah.
And yes and no. So yes, because I still have VAs till now.
Yeah.
And they've been. So let me backtrack. I think a challenge with managing VAs is not being able to put a process in place for them, right? If you don't do that, it's going to be a horrible experience. So the first VA that I had, she helped me to get a deal, but managing that VA was a horrible experience because I always had to oversee what she was doing. But the subsequent ones have been fantastic. And that's because before anyone joins, I have a process that I'll put in place. And then from day one, I would walk them through that process. So what I even did was I would take leave from my job just to onboard them. So I would walk them through an entire 8-hour process on day one, walking them through our systems, our processes, what they need to do, the expectations. So they have a task list. And then for every task list, I do videos. right?
Smart.
So I probably
Yeah.
have about 200 videos recording myself doing
Doing
interesting
that
stuff.
task.
Yeah. So if I want them to, for example, send an email to my email list, I would record myself saying, "Hi, go to this website, click this button, type this, do this, don't do this." And those recordings would typically be like 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then what I do is I say, "Hi, John. Hi, Mark. When you resume, watch this video. When you watch the video, let me know if you have any questions."
Smart.
If they have any questions, I jump on the call, I address it with them. Once they are aligned with what's in the video, I never have to follow up with them again. So it's the same thing I did with my social media VA, who I hired in December because I wanted to really push our brand.
Yep.
So in Q1, we heavily focused on social media. And right now, we have our social media calendar and our content for, I would say, a quarter in advance.
Nice.
And I spend maybe like 30 minutes tops every week on social media. All I do is I record stuff. Once it's recorded, I upload on a drive, and I just edit like the captions whenever he sends me the edits. I just say, okay, change this. And once it's changed, it's done. He schedules it and it's live. Sometimes I don't even know what's being posted on my social until I actually open my Instagram.
Yeah, you go on and you're like, oh, there I am.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's already been pre-approved, you pre-discussed months in advance, and it's been scheduled.
Are you writing the copy as well, or are you just taking the photos?
So it depends, right? So there's different type of content that we're putting out right now. So
Right.
so we started off with the podcast. So for the podcast, I do the content. So between myself and the audience or the guest, we would decide the questions. I'd ask them. It's recorded, and then we put it online. So there isn't so much to do there. Now there's other content like user-generated content that I do, like reels and whatnot. So I do that as well.
Yep.
And then if it's things like carousels, I just say, okay, Google this, and then everything that goes out, I have to see it first because he's from the Philippines. Sometimes, there's some things that I have to check with respect to the English, the structure, just to ensure that it resonates with the local audience. So I review everything that goes out.
Yeah.
But he does the editing of the videos. He does the captions on the videos. He does like the sound effects. He does the edit. He does everything.
Nice. That's so handy.
Yeah.
That's so handy. And I love the way that you said you have to train these people as if they're employees.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I think, and myself,
So it's full-time.
I'm totally guilty of this. Like you just expect some VA to do something because that's kind of their gig. But no, you have to onboard them to show them what it is that you want, because everybody might want something different.
Yeah.
Smart.
So I think there's also the impression that a virtual assistant isn't like maybe cannot understand. But the truth is, so I'm from Nigeria, right? And it's really currency arbitrage, right? Nigeria isn't as advanced as Canada. So what you would get as income or as salary in Nigeria, if you converted that to Canadian currency, it would probably be lower than what you would get here. So what I would, in 2019 when I was in Nigeria, the income I would have gotten for the same work versus what I would get in Canada for the same work would probably be very different. So there's currency arbitrage there. So a lot of these VAs, a lot of them are master's holders. A lot of them went to university, like they
Well-educated,
have well-educated people. Some are even more educated than Canadians, right? So the impression that those VAs don't understand, is completely false. Like they teach me stuff, and like I've learned subject matter things from them, like social media and whatnot. So I think that's an impression that also makes people think, oh, I don't want a VA. But if you get someone who's learned, who has experience, and you put the right processes and systems in place for them, they will follow it to a T. Like I don't give them room to assume. Like there's zero room to assume.
That's a good point.
Everything that can be left to assumption, there's a video for it. Nice. And once there's something that I find myself doing twice, it's not worth my time.
Right.
So I immediately do a video for it, so I don't do the third
System. Bang.
Yeah.
No room to assume.
Yeah.
I like that. You should put that on your T-shirts. A slogan. Deals estate, no room to assume. Let's go back to wholesaling. So finding deals. What's your favorite way to find deals? What's your best marketing channel?
So I'm still figuring that out, but there's a channel that we use the most, which is direct mail.
Yep.
So that's what we've been using historically. And the reason why like I like that is because you get economies of scale. One, so with Canada Post, we have a commercial account, so our pricing is cheaper than retail pricing.
Sure.
So investors who work with us, can send out flyers cheaper than they would send out flyers themselves.
Yep.
So that's obviously one advantage of doing flyers. Two is the real estate. So when you send out a flyer, it's not like an ad where in 2, 3, 6 months, like the ad is expired, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you send out that flyer, you could still get a seller call you back in 3-6 months, which has happened, right?
Sure.
Because
they stick it to the fridge and
exactly. So those two things, I would say, are the reason why we've really stuck with flyers. Now we are obviously trying to, explore other methods. Some we've tried, some have failed. And we are still trying more. But there's obviously a lot of methods, but, flyers are number one right now.
It's a really good point. Flyers have a lifespan. They can actually stick around. Whereas an ad on Facebook, it might be here today, but in 3 seconds it's gone and somebody else is seeing the next ad.
Exactly.
But you can target that ad, whereas a flyer you don't get any feedback from.
True.
Right. So it's like what's better, what's worse. In terms of like your cost for acquisition over the 20 deals that you've done, what do you figure that cost would be for direct mail?
So I would say right now, like it's gone up. At some point it was about $200. Yep.
To find a deal?
Yep.
That's so cheap.
Well, I wouldn't. So per lead.
Per lead. Oh, per lead.
Yeah.
Okay. What about to actually close a deal?
So,
like if you said I spent 20 grand and I got 20 deals, you'd be $1,000 a deal.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what was your marketing spend to get those 20 deals overall, and then what do you think would be per deal?
Yeah. So because we've done it over a long period of time, and like the marketing hasn't really been consistent, so we do the calculation on a campaign by campaign basis. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So like on average, our campaign spend is about 5,000.
Yep.
And on average, like we would get like maybe 20,000 in returns.
Yeah.
For that
Spend
campaign.
5, make 20.
Yeah.
That's a 4-to-1 return.
Yeah. So that's on average.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've done deals where like it's more than 4-to-1.
Yep.
But on average, and that's what we typically get
That's
per
pretty good.
campaign. And then some campaigns it's usually less, right? But yeah, on average.
What's your favorite deal?
So there's one that I recall. It was a deal that we assigned, based out of Chatham. I think it was about a 60-something thousand wholesale fee. Now the reason why I particularly liked that deal was because it almost fell through, and we were able to resuscitate the deal by sheer collaboration, and like I actually got like a new connection as part of that deal. So
isn't that the best feeling to be able to pull a deal from the depths and be like, oh, we got it? Yeah.
So we actually spoke about that on the last episode of our podcast, because what had happened was we got the deal in Chatham. I forget the purchase price. I think it was about 80-something thousand, like the contract price. What had happened was when we sent out the flyers, I think we sent it out maybe October, and this seller calls me around 10:30 in the evening. Now, sellers don't typically call that late.
Right. Unless there's a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
so you're like, hello?
I saw the call, and I almost didn't pick up. So I picked up, and he said, hey, is this Juice Estate? I said, yeah, I'm looking to sell my house. So I looked at the time, I'm like, okay, if you're calling at this time, maybe there's some sort of motivation there. So I took the call. We spoke for like, I think it was a good 30 minutes.
Yep.
Right. And I told him we're going to have someone come to his place to do a walkthrough. And I informed my partners that, someone just called at 10:30, and I think it's a deal. So we ran the numbers and we made 3 offers. So we put 3 contracts together. I remember that one was a firm deal, no conditions. The second one was, I think, a conditional offer for maybe 100K more. So like 10K more. And then the third one was just an offer with like all the conditions, like high price. So we thought they were going to go with, the one that had the highest price, right, with the most conditions. And we were shocked because they took the first one, the firm one, with the lowest price.
Really?
And like my partner who even went there was like, can you imagine that they took, the lowest one? So that just goes to show that not every seller like is looking for price.
It's true.
They just wanted out of the deal. So, for me, that was also when I learned that it's always good to have multiple offers, because you just don't know what resonates with the seller. It could be price, it could be terms.
That's a really good point.
Right.
A lot of realtors don't understand that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, everybody just wants the most money. It's like, well, no, there's other things that are a factor
Exactly.
here. Yeah.
So in that case, their selection evidently told us what was most important to them at the time, and it wasn't price, because they had the opportunity to select the one with the best price.
Yeah.
So it was a firm deal. And because we didn't expect it, I also didn't expect to be firm on the deal. So, it was more like, how you give 3 offers, but you are leaning, like you want them to take the second one, right? You're like, okay, let's take the conditional one with like the 100K asking price. It's conditional, so we still have some time. But let's give them a low price, but firm, but they wouldn't take it,
Yeah.
And then they take it. I'm like, oh, wow. So now we're firm. Okay, so how do we, get this deal done? So because it was so low, we started to discuss, do we assign it or do we take it down? And that's what I was saying earlier, right? The freedom of choice, I think it's great. So I was like, okay, let's have a backup in place where we take it down if we don't get anybody to pick it up. But we found someone who was going to pick it up, and she was shuttling between Detroit and Canada. She was looking to get a house. I think she had some issues. So she's been looking for a house for a while, and she hadn't seen.
Sure.
So she was so excited about this house that she put a $30,000 deposit. So I was like, okay, this lady is very serious. Like, she wants this house. So she had a lot of issues with her financing, but I didn't mind. Again, she put down $30K as a deposit. Yeah. So I was like, I was going to work with her. And I would say a few days to closing, I found out that she had tax issues.
Ooh.
So the bank, had gone through the whole financing process. They had sent an appraiser to the property. And after the appraisal was done, then they said, oh, sorry, we can't finance this because of your tax issues. So I was like,
damn, nobody's going to close. What's going to happen? Yeah.
So I was like, wow, you're giving me like 2 days, to close. So I told her, I'll get back to you. And then I reached out to like the Finlay team. And that's where, I met someone, called Kenny, who I work with now. And he was able to get us private financing in about 2 days.
Nice.
So we got private financing for the lady. She was able to close with private. The lender had to waive the appraisal requirement.
Yeah, no time.
Till after closing.
That's right.
Can you imagine that? So we literally got a private lender to fund the deal without appraisal.
Yeah.
So the reason why it's my most exciting deal is because of all the things that I mentioned. Like, 1, the price was good. 2, the fact that we provided 3 offers, and the seller obviously chose the lowest price. The fact that we were firm without us actually intending to be firm. The fact that we found a seller who put a relatively high deposit, which is not the norm. Yeah. How our deal fell through, how we were able to revive it, get a private financing in like a day or 2. I think it was like a day. With appraisal requirements, and just get that deal done. So
1 day, it's fast.
So there were a lot of unusual things that happened that deal, and it just showed us and showed me that like anything is possible if you really want to get a deal done. Yeah. So yeah, like it's just one of my most exciting deals. That's cool.
Do you market far and wide, or do you focus on a couple of niche pockets? What do you do?
So because we work with investors across different locations, at a time we were operating in about 25 cities. Right? It's just dependent on where the investor is based. So for example, if you are based here, then we would work with you here. We would send out flyers here. We'd have like a sales team here. We'd partner with someone who's local here if we don't have like the knowledge of that market. So it's really dependent on the investor.
Gotcha. How do you pay those people, the sales team?
So they are sales partners. They're also investors, right? They're not full staff. Okay. Right. So it's like, if, for example, you were an investor in the Durham region and you are either a wholesaler or you are someone with like a sales background, or you have like very deep knowledge of the Durham region, you could essentially be our sales partner.
Gotcha.
Right. So it was less about me hiring a team. It was more around, who do I partner with? Who is the best possible person in this location to be able to do those tasks that we've identified as, the roles to be done?
So they are the active investor. You're finding a lead and saying, okay, investor person that wants to buy this, you go and then talk to the seller. That way your hands off, you found the lead, they take the deal down, they get a great deal, you get a wholesale fee.
Correct. So it's three people.
Yep.
So there's the investor who funded the campaign.
Okay.
Right. There is the partner in those markets that are the active investor. They would be the ones who would qualify the lead. They would be the ones who would handle the acquisition end to end.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is to get the deal under contract. Right.
Gotcha.
So everything that has to do with getting the deal under contract, speaking with the seller, doing the walkthroughs, doing the deal analysis, doing the qualification, they handle that part. Where I come in is I handle like the systems, the back end, the disposition, like the legal, the contracting, just ensuring that the deal is assigned. That's where I come in. I also handle like the capital raising as well, reaching out to investors, funding the campaigns, finding investors who are willing to partner with us. So that's what I do. So my activity isn't around acquisition. It's more around disposition and capital raising.
Gotcha. That's really cool. That's it. I've never heard it broken down in this regard. And you said something interesting there. You said the investor that funded the deal. This is a program that you have on the go.
So that's the passive wholesaling program, right? So the investors who fund the campaigns are effectively active investors who have identified that,
Whoa, hang on there, Bingo. Don't forget to check out the highest to best use playbook before we get back to the episode. Amazon chapter, Barnes & Nobles, all the different places. You can go to thehighesttobestuse.com for direct links, or you can check it out on those websites directly, and you can get it in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. And of course, we talk about the three tenets, the core tenets of the highest to best use: land, structure, skill sets, and time. Those will really benefit your business. Now back to the episode.
My highest and best use skill, for example, is I'm a flipper. I know how to manage GCs. I know how to manage teams. I know how to manage project managers. But I'm not the best at qualifying leads. I'm not the best at following up with leads. I'm not the best at, doing ads, right? So I want to outsource my deal finding or my deal acquisition to the deals estate team, right?
Gotcha.
So they would partner with us. They would fund the campaigns, and, they would essentially be in the concept of the passive wholesaling. They would be the passive investor, but they're essentially active real estate investors who are passively building their deal pipeline with us.
Is that why you, like for your ad spend, when I said, what do you spend to find a lead or to find a deal? And you're like, oh, it's a 4-to-1 return. Is that how you break it down to your investors? You say, hey, this is how much we spend. This is what you get back.
Yeah. So we typically say, when we started, it was higher, right?
Yeah.
Because we had done fewer deals. The market was better then. So then it was about 10-to-1. Right. So we just say, okay, if you put down $5,000, this is how much
you get back 50. Yeah.
But as we've done more deals and as the market has sort of normalized, those returns have obviously averaged out. Right.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that we've also found with respect to managing expectations. Right. At the start, we had investors who obviously carried the expectation of 10x. Right. And then when the market sort of like leveled out, those expectations.
Everybody cools together.
Yeah.
Right.
So we had to just sort of like manage those expectations.
Interesting. What type of criteria would you look for in an investor? If somebody came to you and said, I've got $1 million, I want to fund your next, crazy campaign. Would you be like, whoa, that's too big for us? Or would you say, that's interesting, tell me more? Like, how would you see that?
So I would say the limit to how much you can spend is essentially depending on the market size. So the limit you could spend is based off of the market size. So you obviously can outspend like the market. You can't send flyers to more houses than the market allows. So that's on the price side. But with respect to the investor criteria, as I mentioned, when we started, we obviously work with multiple investors. But what we found is the investors who have succeeded are the ones who are more active and who are open to more exit options, right? So for example, if you were only interested in working with us because you wanted to get a share of the wholesale fee. Yeah. There are deals where you make more money if you do a hotel. There are deals where you make more money if you flip. But if you are not ready to work with us to flip the property or work with us to do a hotel, and you just want to wholesale the deal, by all means, then we find that there's a conflict of interest there. So essentially, we want to work with investors who are actively looking to do deals, right? Yeah. So if there's an investor who maybe wants to do one deal a year, right, it's going to be hard for that investor to justify a 60 to 100K annual spend. Yeah. Right. Because when we started, we were looking to onboard investors who wanted to spend about 60 to 100K. But again, we found that some investors would do like a 1 month spend, and they'll be like, let me wait until I get my first deal and then I'll do it again. But with wholesaling, consistency is key. Totally. Right? Yeah. If you stop marketing, then you sort of lose the momentum. Even the sellers who see your flyers, like they feel like, okay, you are inconsistent. Maybe it's when you're happy, that you send the flyers.
Yeah.
But so we found that where you do a campaign once, and then you are expecting that the sellers who want to sell, they want to sell at that exact time that you send that exact flyer, which isn't always the case, right?
Right.
But if you look at it more like a portfolio view, where you ask yourself, over the period of 1 year, all the campaigns I did, what was the overall return? Then that's when you get the the highest gains. So yeah, those are the criteria of investors that we're looking for, like long-term seeking, people who are looking to consistently do marketing, who want to grow their portfolio, who want to get more deals, and are not just looking for one deal, are not just looking to test out, what they would make on a 5 to 10K spend.
Yeah. What do you figure, where do you figure the most amount of money is made in wholesaling?
So I think it depends on the market. And again, I haven't spent enough time, like years, to be able to give you like a very informed decision. But what I found is, depending on the market, you could probably make more money doing like hotels and flips versus wholesaling, right? But I look at it more from what's the return on time.
Oh, return on time.
Yeah. So if I get a deal today, and I'm able to make a 20K wholesale fee with zero risk, but I have to take risk, and I'm going to make 30 or 40K, it might make sense to do the wholesale, get 20K and put it back in the business, versus going all out, doing the flip, and then something happens. So for example, there was a deal that we did where we had an appraisal for a certain amount, and we were expecting that, okay, we will put in about 20K. So I think the appraisal came in at maybe 480, and then we thought if we put in 20K, it would be worth 500.
Yeah.
And then I think we sold it for like maybe 430 or something.
Yep.
Which was like 70,000 below the appraised value.
Yeah.
So when those unforeseen circumstances happen, it's not everything you can account for when you're doing the deal analysis, right? Yeah. So those things happen. So if you are able to book a wholesale fee without that risk, and it's a significant amount, then it might be worth your time to take that rather than make an extra 10, 15K in like 6 months.
True. Yeah. I love what you said about the risk. I think not enough people evaluate risk and, as you mentioned, time, return on time. It's huge, because the incremental costs that you make over that amount of time may not be worth it.
Yeah.
Right. And especially when we're in a downward trending market, and now we're kind of flat, but generally we were trending down for a while, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen in 6 months? This thing's going to be worth less.
Exactly.
And most wholesalers in this market and most flippers are like, well, if I hold it, the carrying cost will get wiped out because the market keeps going up.
Exactly.
Right. And we end up in a better place, but that's not always the case. So any more thoughts on that?
So at least in this market, what we've started doing is, when we are doing deal analysis, we just identify, if it's been on a downward trend, how much more can it go down? Yeah. So if the ARV today is 500, I would use probably 450 as my ARV.
Super conservative.
I would account for that drop, right? Because you might not really understand or know the impact of the hikes up until maybe 2-3 months, right? Yeah. So I would assume that it's going to drop further, do a lower ARV, and then my max allowable offer will be based off of that. So that if anything happens, it's already built into the calculation.
Sure. So let's talk about the market. So how have things changed over the last 12 months in the way that you see it now versus maybe what they were prior to the fall off?
Okay. So I have been in this space for, I'll say, a little over a year.
Yep.
But what I've done is to compensate for the fact that I haven't been here long. I have obviously spoken with a lot of investors who have been in the space longer, and also seen what has happened in the US as well. And I have a hypothesis of the market cycles now, just based off of historical data, right? Yeah. And what I find was, when I came into real estate, we were in an upward market, and with wholesaling, you have way more buyers. So even if your deal isn't necessarily the best, you would still get competing offers and you would get higher margins. Last year, the deals that we were doing, we found that the margins were shrinking, right? Because there were fewer buyers, and they obviously had more negotiating power.
People are scared.
Yeah. Right. So I find that now, because we're looking to restart our program now, because we are now, I would say, in a flat market, this is the opportunity to now enjoy the upside that's coming, right? Because the way I look at it is, one, I'm an immigrant, so I know that immigration levels are going to consistently remain high. I came in 3 years ago. I know other people are coming. I know people from Nigeria that are coming.
Yeah.
So
you can sell them deals when they come. Be like, I have a house for you.
Exactly right. So the fundamentals remain the same. There's a demand supply issue. There's going to be more immigrants. There's going to be more people. The population is growing, and we don't have enough houses. I also look at the habitable land that Canada has, and I think maybe 90% of the population is constrained in like just a very small portion of the country.
Yeah.
So because of that, like housing would not stay down, right? It's only down because the BOC is raising the interest rates and deliberately doing the quantitative tightening. So it's only a matter of time before it goes back up. So now that we are sort of in a flat market and we're going to see how that changes, I think it's a very good time to wholesale, because as the market starts to go back up, then you get more buyers coming, looking to get deals. The pent-up demand from the past few months of not buying also gets them really excited about getting new deals. So you could enjoy the upside of having to sell them deals.
Do you think the acquisition side or the disposition side is tougher in a market that's been falling off?
So I think it's definitely, so it's easier to find deals when the market is coming down. Not as easy to sell them, right? Because buyers now want it at a ridiculous discount. So the deal might make sense, might not make sense for the buyer, because the buyer is also trying to compensate for any further drops.
Yeah, they have to close, they have to flip, they have to fix it.
Exactly. And they have to do it within the time that the market hasn't gone down as much, right? So because of those different things, what I find is that to communicate that to the seller, it's usually a tough sell. A seller says, I want to sell for 500, and you're like, no, I want to buy for 300. Now, what? And you say, oh, the market is down, but they're like, not that bad.
Yeah.
But you know that the person who you're going to sell it to wants it at 200.
Yeah.
Because they want to ensure that they don't lose money. So I find that like there's obviously way more sellers looking to sell.
Yeah.
Probably not as many buyers looking to buy.
What do you think the biggest motivation is to sell right now? Is it debt? Is it time? Like, what is it?
So I think probably debt. Like we've gotten a lot of calls very recently on from people who are leveraged. But for a reason, like they're not as motivated as you would expect them to be.
Really?
Yeah, but they'll tell you, oh, like I need this amount to pay off my debt. Okay, so how much is the debt? This amount. Okay, but this is what we can pay. Oh, no, I need to cover my debt. I'm like, okay, yeah, you bought it last year. So if you want to sell now, technically you just can't cover it because it's worth less. But they're like, no, I need to cover my debt. So
and you're like, I can't help you.
We can't help you. Like if it was maybe a multifamily, then you could maybe structure something creatively. But on the single family side, not much you can do there. So depending on the motivation of the seller, they could either like take the haircuts there and then, or just wait it out.
Sure.
Right. And there's a couple of sellers who have chosen to wait it out.
Yeah. Do you tell them, look, I can't help you. I think this is maybe some free advice that might be of benefit. Try this, try this, try this. If at least you can't buy it, you can give somebody some great advice.
Yeah. Well, there's not so much you can do in that situation. Like if it's a single family, you bought it for 500, your mortgage is like maybe 400 or something. And now the house is worth like 400 or like 350. Like the loan amount isn't going anywhere. It has to be paid
it's
off.
fixed.
It's fixed.
Yeah. So
you could advise them. There's not much you can do. Well, there's a few creative strategies, right? Like if you are like an investor who is like long term, you could decide to take up the payments, right?
Yeah.
You maybe do creative financing strategies. Take up the payments of the building, hold the building. When the building comes back up, then you enjoy the upside, right? But from a wholesaling standpoint, your buyers are typically people who want to buy today and flip, not necessarily hold for the long term.
Yeah. And
not many holders on the retail side are looking to assume existing mortgages, and do all those fancy creative strategies. So there's that mismatch between, what the buyers are looking for in this market and what the sellers are asking for.
If you could talk to yourself pre-2019 versus where you are today, what would you say to yourself and why?
Well, I'll definitely say, I should have been more consistent. and I should have started way earlier, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So in 2019, that was when I was doing the research, but I only really started, I would say, I came in 2019.
Yep.
I did like my research and just learning about real estate in 2020, but I only really started in 2021. By then the market was already going up, right? So if I could go back 100%, I'll definitely say like start earlier, and just put my boots in the water as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm looking to do now. So when the market started to slow down, first thing I did was I started to research like down markets in Canada, in the US historically, and how those down markets have played out.
Which ones came up as down markets?
So I looked at the one of 2017, 2018.
Yep.
Then I also looked at 08, right? And just the strategies that people used during those down markets, right?
Yeah.
Rent to own came out, as one of the strategies then. Wholesaling obviously got impacted, but just being able to find better deals, was what they were doing. And then the types of buyers you were selling to were buyers who were willing to hold the property and wait for the markets to come back. So we just decided to just ensure that we planned out how long we needed to stay in business. So I think on average, the past 6 down markets have lasted about 13 months from a research that I saw. So February was when the whole thing started. So I had thought, 13 months from February would probably be like summer of this year. So I figured summer of this year would be when things would start to, like the rates would start to like plateau. Yep. Which it seems like it started already. So the 13 months is almost about right. Yeah. So now my mindset is, okay, there's an upward trend coming. The upward trend might start this summer, it might start in the fall, it might start next year, but it's coming, right? And when it comes, we want to ensure that we are well positioned for that. And so that's my viewpoint.
Man, this has been such a great show. I'm so impressed with just how analytical you are, your backstory, your drive, like your sincere genuineness to the way that you're operating the business. The fact that you came here basically just, ready to learn and ready to win and ready to take action. You didn't quit your job. You did it evenings and weekends, and you're still continuing to do it today. It's really inspiring. So from this side of the mic, thank you very much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Like, it was meaning a lot. I look up to yourself and more experienced investors, and that's my driving force. I always look at what's achievable, like the art of the possible. Yeah. So I'm very excited about what's going to happen in the next few months and in the next few years in real estate. Awesome.
How can people find out more about you and your podcast and your Facebook group?
So on Instagram and on my social media platforms, Deals Estate CA. So those are my handles. I also have the podcast as well. So anyone who goes on my social would see like the podcast link. The name of the podcast is the Deals Estate Wholesaling Podcast. What we do there is we discuss with experienced investors on how to find, how to finance, and how to facilitate off-market deals. So we interview, it could be wholesalers, it could be investors, it could be mortgage brokers, it could be lawyers, anyone who basically participates in the off-market process. We discuss and interview with them. And then we also have a Facebook group that we're growing. We want to build a community where people who are looking to get into wholesaling have something that they can fall back on. When I started, there were a few mentorship groups, but they were largely real estate mentorship groups. There wasn't any wholesaling specific mentorship group. There wasn't any wholesaling specific community. So I'm just looking to build that community so that people that are coming behind me have something to like to fall back on.
I love it. Cool. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to sign up to the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. I'm Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.